see here, there's a lot of little notes for like the kind of objectives for the lesson, because this used to be two, we've kind of combined it into one. So I'm going to try to get through it, and I'll start a little bit, I'll cut into our homework review so that we can. So today we're gonna, the first 2 points really are talking about the garden assessment, assessing a garden when you kind of first show up, and then assessing it with including all the topics that we've kind of covered for the last 7 classes. So including all of those in and like looking at a garden and assessing it. And we'll do like very basic kind of troubleshoot problems, talk about creating a cost analysis work plan, and then talking about the certification and how you can use it, which we did in the first class, but doesn't hurt to say it again. And yeah, we'll all of it, the creating cost analysis and talking about what to charge is all kind of part of the same slide or same activity, I suppose. So the garden assessment. This is like, okay, so whenever you show up and you meet a new, when you're meeting a new client and their garden, you want to narrow in on the cost and time it's going to take to maintain their garden, and also how you're going to work with that owner or that client, or what their needs are. So time and cost should be going through your head, like how long is this going to take me, and also what is it that they really want from their garden, and how you're going to work with them on that. And so let's see, I have you want to be realistic about what you can actually accomplish, right? Because usually at a garden assessment, people are telling you all their dreams and hopes for their garden, and just being realistic about what you can actually accomplish in this space. And that's why it's like narrowing in on like, okay, what do they really want? What are their priorities? And what can you really accomplish, or how much can you do in the time frame that you're gonna have? And I think of the first, like a solid, detailed kind of site assessment, or here we're calling it a garden assessment. Solid detailed site assessment is really key, and like kind of the first step to getting a good idea of what a client wants and needs and what you can do, right? So this is kind of the first step to kind of doing, like making a plan, like a maintenance plan. I think, let's see here, I believe my first, yes. So just ignore the writing in the green box. I just stole this or moved this slide up from an activity. But here is if you go to page 135 on your student handbook, I just put this here as a reminder to me to talk about this garden assessment form that's in your student workbook. And we're gonna kind of walk through it. It is just a really basic one. This isn't like, I'm not saying this is the only one to use. It's just a very basic guideline for doing a garden assessment. And I would, use this if you want, or add to it. I definitely think there's some extra considerations I would add to this one. This one's mostly about the age of the garden, plants. It's 3 pages long. But in this case, I would add some things for like the client's preferences and their needs. This is mostly just like garden stuff, but you definitely want to have like their preferences and their needs in there. And some of those that I would add would definitely be, like, first of all, which again, like these things I'm going to say are not on this garden assessment, so that's why I'm kind of throwing them in before we go through the rest, which is stuff like a curb appeal. You definitely want to know, or like, I mean, take photos when you first, take photos of it. What does it look like from the street? Do they like the way it looks? Do they have HOA? Are they part of an HOA? Is that like a limitation? Like, what does this look like for outsiders? Because, there's a misconception that native plants are really weedy and kind of like dry and crispy. So we don't want to add to that. And especially if they don't want to add to that, the client, right? So curb appeal would be one, just sustainability in general, especially finding out, is that important to this client? Is it important not only that this saves water, but maybe that there's no outputs or inputs going in, inputs or outputs going into or out of their garden, assessing what is their kind of, what's the word? Like how important sustainability of their garden is. And if it is really important, obviously, maybe focusing more on those things. So that kind of stuff. Also, I would add like, just like nature and beauty, like how are these things important to the person, to the client? Things like, most people do appreciate that their gardens support and foster kind of wildlife, especially native garden lovers. And if that's the case, you really want to be supporting that, and making sure that you are letting them know that, like, okay, yeah, we're going to prune outside the bird nesting season. We're going to make sure that we don't prune stuff that is wildlife or food, and we'll wait, as long as possible to deadhead, things like that, like finding out if the habitat kind of nature aspect is really important to them. Or maybe some folks are just like, I just want annual flowers. I want blooms all year long, or I want annual color all year long. Like finding out what is it, is it beauty, is it nature, is it both? Like what's their priority if they have one at all? And then lastly, I think what I would add to this assessment form, which kind of actually, if you look at the bottom here, this is garden features. The next page is a couple of these things, but it doesn't go far enough for me. And personally, I would add to that zone, just like, how do they use their garden? Do they use it as like a relaxing space where it's, a quiet, relaxing space, or do they use it as like an entertaining area where they have lots of people, or do they use it, maybe they have kids and pets where they, use it as a play space, for like romping around or something. And all of those are going to help you determine, different plants to choose. You don't want like super flammable stuff by somebody's like barbecue, or like spiky stuff around a play area. Getting a gist, I think that I really like knowing, like, how do you use your garden, or how do you envision using your garden? So to me, those are points that are kind of the client's desires and preferences, and kind of getting behind, interviewing them a bit. And you want to start with that, like start with their needs, and then get into kind of the conditions of the garden and what the plants and the landscape needs. Do you know what I'm saying? You don't want to just jump into like, well, this would be healthiest for your landscape. You want to definitely take into consideration what they actually like and what's important to them. So, okay, so going back to you guys can follow along on page 135 if you have it, your garden assessment form. I'm just going to kind of walk through each of these points. And so the first one is just the age of the garden. We've kind of talked about this quite a bit, I think. Well, maybe not quite a bit, but this would be getting into garden stuff, not just the client's desires, but age of the garden is super important. Maybe you didn't install it, so you figuring out and knowing how old it is important, because we said the first couple 3-4 years are like the establishing period for it. So it's you might have a different watering regime. You might have different pruning maintenance activities that you're going to be doing in a in a younger garden versus an older garden. So knowing its age is important, and there is like a little option there. If it's an established garden, is it young garden? Is it a mix of things? And yeah, so looking for signs if you don't know how old it is, like how old it is. Are these recently planted things? Are the trees established? Is there a mix? You definitely want to know that that before, that's a point to definitely take note of. Next would be the plants themselves. So we're moving further into this assessment form. So yeah, just getting a list of plants, obviously. A list of plants, if they have one, like a plant list, great. I would definitely take photos of everything, especially stuff you don't know what it is. Like if you're not familiar with the plant, take a picture of it so you can try to identify it later. But ask about any kind of major tree or feature or unusual plant. You want to know if they have, like, a lot of people have sentimental value with certain trees, or even non-natives. It's like, I know this isn't native, but I actually really like this tree because it was planted by X person who's really important in my life, that sort of thing. So ask about any big kind of plant or feature in general. Then of course, look for any kind of stressed, look at the plant health. Like, is there stressed ones? Are there diseased ones, dying plants? Assessing kind of any problems like invasive plants or weeds. Definitely take note. That's all in your on your assessment. Taking note of these things. You can see that. Sorry, I didn't really mention this, but the assessment form has this like priority kind of way of qualifying things. You can use it however you want. If you just want to use it for taking notes or saying like yes or no on something, it's really bad, it's really healthy. I mean, however you want to use that section, but you do want to have some kind of way of categorizing, like if it's in a good or a bad position, each of these points that we're going over. So continuing with the plants, yeah, and are they invasive? Are they on like or are they on the interface between like a wildland space and urban space? Because that might really impact if you want to do some kind of firescaping with their space. And then of course asking, knowing what is the current maintenance? Is there good air circulation? Are these plants being deadheaded, pruned, maintained? How that sort of thing. So moving through plants, the next page is actually the garden features thing, which you can see the first three things are under garden features, which again, I kind of consider these sort of, well, you definitely want to note any shade, obviously, on the property. If there's big shade from trees, from the neighbor's trees, from any structures, definitely note that. I would actually put that on a map more. That's how I would do it. But either way, something to note. Water features, if they have, fountains, bird baths, things like that, especially if they have any kind of like infiltration basin or a rain garden, seasonal streams, because there's maintenance involved, at least usually like seasonal maintenance involved with those. And then outdoor rooms for me kind of falls under the category of how you use your space. So do they have like a patio or a deck or things like that, suitability. So again, this little section here, I would say for me is more like under the mapping / how they use their garden. But moving forward, we're going to go through soils and mulch and then irrigation. So continuing on with this garden assessment, with the soils and mulch portion, let's see, I'm going to look at the actual, yeah, we have, yeah, you're basically looking for kind of drainage issues, definitely. You could do a drainage test and a textural test if you wanted, and there is a spot for noting that information on the assessment form. Typically, I don't personally do one on the first one, but I do typically at least feel the soil a little bit to just see what I'm working with if it's something like that. But definitely look for any kind of drainage issues. Is it clayey? Because that's going to be a different type of plant selection, compaction, hydrophobic soils, anything like that. Definitely looking for areas that stay wet too long or dry too long, especially if it's an irrigation system issue, like it's just only getting wet here. Definitely looking for erosion, signs of erosion in the soil, if you're seeing gullies on a slope, or I'm trying to think what else, or even just like where, if you're seeing like silty stuff kind of build up at the bottom of the slope. So looking for these signs of either water not infiltrating or soil being carried away. And definitely noting the changes of like topographical changes. I always put on usually on the map of the site, where's the high point, where's the low point? How does the water move through the space? Because water is going to carry soil, especially if it's moving quickly. And that's usually an erosive factor. But any kind of high points, low points, slopes, drainages or rain gutters, where are those outletting out to? Any kind of drains I would definitely note on there, because that might be water you can actually capture or, and infiltrate on site, or even, design to take advantage of. And here it says, yeah, oh, right. So, and if you have like, you can also have like a low wet area, it could be a riparian spot, like maybe these areas don't have to be problem areas. It's just like, again, the right plant for the right space. So potentially utilizing these kind of features and putting the right plants in there. Then lastly, I have like, is there mulch? So what kind of mulch is it? How thick is it? Like how do they need more? Is it just an inch thick? Is it the appropriate mulch for the plant palette? That sort of thing. Next on your assessment is irrigation, water use, runoff kind of issues. Definitely, I would just, first I think start with just asking the client about their current water use. Like what is their current water use? What's just whatever they know about it, get that information. And then again, going back to what I was just saying, but definitely understanding how the water flows on their site, in the garden, on the landscape, because even if it hasn't rained in a while, and I know this happens all the time, people are like, oh, it doesn't rain here, it hasn't rained in years. It's like, but when it does, you want to know where that water pools so that, once it does rain, you don't have a bunch of water pooling up around your house. So again, this kind of knowing high and low points and how water flows on the landscape, I can't emphasize enough, because I think it really impacts how you would plant your garden and how you plan it. Also, plan with a PLAN and also PLANT. So This is kind of similar, but definitely looking for water pooling or any signs of dirt on sidewalks and driveways, you know, like mulch flying off, or not flying off, but being carried away. That would be a sign of runoff. Asking them, you know, a lot of people have lived in their house long enough to remember when there was a rainy event, and they can tell you like, oh, this always is full of water after, you know, like, you know, a couple days of rain, stuff like that. Looking for water runoff type things. And then also check the irrigation system, like just run it, see if it works. Does it work? You know, does it work the way they thought it did, or they were, you know, they planned for it to work? Is it an appropriate irrigation system for the plant system that they have, or the garden they have? Or is it appropriate for what you're planning for? You know, so just making sure it just works, A. Check the every hydro zone, you know, and B, like check the weather controller, sorry, not the weather controller, the irrigation controller, you know, if the, does it have longer than 7-day intervals? You know, if it's like one of those old ones that's from like turf days, it might, you know, maybe it's time for an upgrade. So definitely check the irrigation system. You can see on your garden assessment, it has, you know, a section on the next page, on page 137, for like the type and controller and all those things. So checking all of the stuff around basically irrigation and water. Oh, okay, yeah, and so this is what I was just saying, the controller section, and then you want to give it an overall garden grade, which we will talk about in a second. But just so you guys know, there's on the last page, it's just like the eligible rebates. So if you are in LA County, or well, Los Angeles, this is helpful for what they could be potentially eligible for. So, you know, if they're interested, you know, you can be like, hey, this is also some rebates that you qualify for. So that's your garden assessment. I was saying you should go, that last kind of part there is the overall garden grade. You definitely want to give it some kind of a grade, because categorizing it in terms of how much work needs to be done is important for you to be able to determine like your costs, right? Like you're gonna get a more accurate estimate. So having some kind of categorization of like, is this an easy, medium, hard garden to maintain, I think is really important. So definitely do that when you're doing the garden assessment, because you'll forget. You'll be like, yeah, that seemed kind of easy. That'll be no problem. And then you end up like having way more work on your hands. So make sure to like categorize the garden, give it some kind of grade, you know, estimate its overall health for your own benefit, for determining like how to charge. So here in this assessment, it just has 3 categories: healthy, needs work, and needs major improvement. So healthy would be no major issues. Natives are full 3/4 of the garden. The irrigation system supports the garden efficiently without overwatering. And then there's no major pest or weed issues. That's healthy. So that would be one category. And that's like, okay, this one's healthy. And needs work would mean one major focus area. Needs work is there's one major focus area that you have to focus on, like irrigation or weeds or plant health, like something's amiss that you have to work on. And then needs major improvement would be the garden has more than one major issue. So maybe it has a significant weed problem and an irrigation issue. Or the budget may be limited, you know, if you have a really low budget, and it's like that triangle that's like cheap, fast, and quality, you know, it's like one of those. Anyway, maybe that doesn't work. But either way, budget might be limited, so that would be a sign of needs major improvement. Or maybe they have some kind of event coming up, like a big party, or their HOA is planning an inspection and they're stressing about that. So categorize it in terms of, you know, difficulty or health. Okay, oh, so giving it a grade, let's see, where are we? Yeah, let's, so I have a few photos of some gardens. Some are time, like it's one, you know, when it was installed to later. And just so we can have some little bit of interaction here with you guys, using that checklist that we just went through, you know, all those points, kind of giving, like, how would you think about these gardens that we're gonna go through? You know, like, how would you assess them? What are some of the things you notice? Notice any differences in developmental stages? Maybe how would you approach the different ones? So I'm just gonna go through some photos. Here is a garden you can see newly installed, and then this is a little over 2 years later. And just to orient, I think it's kind of obvious, but here, this Abutilon palmerii is right here, and that's the rock to the left here. And I guess I shouldn't give these away. Does anyone want to identify these also? What this plant is in the front?
Ceanothus?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Ceanothus would be my guess.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like a Ceanothus. And I'm imagining that was what this was here in the front. And now it's kind of grown out, unless it was something small right in front. But any other things you've noticed? Like, I can say, I mean, there's a couple things I would immediately take note of. But you guys looking at this, like as a garden assessment, your first time here, what would you be kind of noticing and taking, noting on your garden assessment?
It's hard because the one on the right is sort of like a close-up of one small area. If there was another photo side by side with looking at the house straight forward, like the one on the left, I'd be able to tell, wow, what's really changed. It's hard to tell.
Well, what if you just showed up and it looked like only the left photo? So maybe you've never, it's not the 28 months later. What would you note from that one?
I think it's kind of sparse, but that's me. That's my, I like more plants than less plants, I suppose.
Right, but newly installed, they really are going to grow out.
No, I know.
It always does look more like a mulch garden than a plant garden.
It's hard to tell on the left of the walkway. It looks like a DG walkway. There's like nothing there.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I know it does look like this is very empty. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else in terms of like features you might see that you would think might need maintenance?
The swale.
Yeah. So to me, yeah, this is some kind of like rain garden feature. There's looks like a rain chain here.
Oh,
can you guys see my cursor? I think you can.
Yeah, I can see the cursor, but yeah.
So to me, I'm like, oh, this is some kind of intentional rain garden swale infiltration basin potentially. Yeah. So something I would consider being an important feature, probably part of the turf replacement program. But definitely something that I would consider, okay, however the water is getting from here to here, if it's simply the rain chain, making sure I'm including that in my maintenance plan. What about anything on this photo? Like anything, does anyone know what this plant is?
It's a buckwheat.
Anyone want to give a guess to which type of buckwheat?
It's that one that queen, that whatever that one is. It's the big one.
Yeah, Catherine Zanslace. Yeah, no, St. Catherine's Lace. Giganteum. Yeah,
it's gonna be in the driveway in a period of time.
A minute.
Yeah, it looks like it's closer in this photo, but then here you can see it's got quite a bit of space.
Got it. Right.
So yeah, it looks all right in terms. What about this guy? This looks like a new planting because it definitely wasn't here, or maybe it was next to it. Does anyone have kind of like a, I don't know, a suggestion, a thought about what's going on there?
Well, it's staked, but
yeah. What about we talked about staking kind of a little bit, but typically you want to get rid of the stake that it comes in. And this is 28 months later. I mean, it could be a newer-ish planting, but this looks like an interesting staking job that I'm not really excited about when I see this. So I would consider maybe either putting 2 stakes, because it looks like there's like one little one and one tall one. And this one might be what it came in. So again, if it really needs staking, maybe putting just 1 further away or 2 further away. This looks like it's like a Gambellia or something, which I don't know if it is because I can't really see it that well, but yeah, that would be something I would consider. If that's 28 months later, even a year later, that stake shouldn't be so close to the plant like that. You know, it does look like it's pretty loosely staked, so that's a plus. But
you think they're directing the growth?
What was that?
Maybe they're directing the growth a certain way to avoid the driveway?
Yeah, potentially. That's what I was wondering, but it's just such a loose kind of staking. It's hard for me to tell, but yeah, that's a possibility for sure. But
honestly, I'm sorry, Claire.
No, go ahead.
If just because I look at these plants like nearly daily, if I had to guess, that's probably Sphaerosia ambigua, like Lewis Hamilton. And those in the nursery trade are super floppy and they come in containers. And so And in fact, some of the growers that we use that little tiny stake type situation. So if anything, I bet they added the larger stake in the back. It's probably not necessarily to entice the plant to grow more in one direction or the other, but simply because
It's
it's
floppy.
just a floppy plant.
Right.
But yeah, like
Yeah.
you were saying, it should be taken out eventually.
Yeah, it would just be something I would, consider taking out, or even do some tip pinching early if it's a new one to get it into that kind of dense branching
Totally.
habit, as opposed to the the floppy look. But a lot of times people plant them in and want that, especially it looks like that was an empty space, so maybe they want that filled out look early on. But I think it always is more time effective to tip pinch them early. But yes, good point. I think you're absolutely right. That's definitely that's most likely Sphaeroaceae instead of Gambellia. And yeah, they're typically leggy and all over the place. I have a hand up.
Hi, yes.
Yeah.
So the plants filled in nicely, looks really good, but I'm wondering how they did with weeds,
Yes.
how many weeds they had, because
Great point.
there's a lot of not really bare because the mulch is in place, but weeds do grow through the mulch.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point.
So-
Definitely weeds, especially because we know it's newly installed on at least that first photo. Such a good point, because we've mentioned that the weeds can be such a factor in the first couple years. So yeah, I think it's a really important point that maybe it looks good in the pictures, but maybe that was a huge maintenance item for this garden since there's a lot of bare space. Yeah, really good point. Did you want to add anything else?
No, let me take my hand down.
No, that's a really important one, especially for a new planting. I'm glad you brought that up because I even forgot about that, but it's a huge one. Here's another picture of newly installed. This also says 1 year later. Sorry, this one is just 1 year later, not the 2 years later. What are you guys intaking from this? We don't actually get to talk to the client, but what are you looking at? What are you assessing when you see this? What would you note on your assessment form? Anyone?
It looks like a healthy landscape.
Okay.
All the plants were, just planned out well. Plants have grown in, after 1 year, it looks as if, many of them have matured, if those are natives. I don't know, that looks like, I don't know what that is, with seaside daisy or something like that, but
Right.
they look, healthy landscape. But again, for me, it's always the weeds. It looks good now, but
Yeah, but
leading
all
up
you
to
can
the
see is the
year,
weeds.
leading up to the year, it's just, knowing that
Right.
for the most part, you're gonna have a weed problem, probably, maybe.
Right.
The other thing is that the stake is still on that tree, and that tree is fairly big, or
Yes.
it's grown in really a lot. So
Yeah, it's also really tight to the tree.
it's
Like,
right, yeah, it's
yeah.
totally wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, we would definitely want to it was obviously in the left photo, you can see it was planted with it, but yeah,
Right.
moving that out at planting would be key. That would be one thing I would, one
Right.
criticism I suppose I had. I think, oh, there's a hand up. I don't have the name.
Jacob.
Oh, Jacob. Yeah. Oh, that's okay. Go ahead, Jacob.
No, I was just gonna say, besides the steak, I mean, it looks really, really good. I mean, it's grown out very fast. I mean, especially the tree. The tree grew really fast.
Mhm.
Everything in its place. The mulch, it seems like they've refreshed that, except that little yellow patch. I can't tell what that is on between. But other than that, everything looks really well maintained, healthy, and whatever they're feeding it, it's going good. You know?
Right. Right. Potentially, yeah. I would almost wonder, I mean, again, we don't have the client or much more information, but I would wonder about they're growing so fast, or they're, it's only been a year, that wonder about if they're applying fertilizer or not, just confirm about that, or potentially concerned about things getting really big and unruly. I mean, this looks like seaside daisy, so I don't think they'll really get too big, but that would be kind of just something that would kind of cross my mind. Also, I was Well, you guys first. Any other kind of points of interest?
Well, based on the fact that the Palo Verde is blooming, the Seaside Daisy is blooming, it's probably springtime, which means there's going to be, I would make a note that perhaps the next trip to the site, there's going to be a healthy amount of deadheading going on.
Great point. Yeah, a lot of the Seaside Daisies like look like there's nobody that's spent, like there's no spent flowers. So that's some, and then the irises in the back probably will, need some deadheading. Good point.
Yeah, and when I go to gardens, to do maintenance work, it's hard in this situation virtually, but just assessing the irrigation, I don't know if we can go very far into irrigation given just like above ground kind of like plant indicators, but that's something I'm trying to like think about throughout these examples is what might the irrigation be like. In this case,
Right.
maybe there's an ample amount of water available to these plants because they are growing in really quickly.
Mhm.
And without really being able to identify all too much other than the Palo Verde and the Seaside Daisy, their water needs seem a little different. So I wonder how that's going to evolve as weather becomes hotter. And yeah, but I also know that Palo Verde kind of surprise within the horticultural world for like how many different situations they can really thrive in. So
Right,
water
'cause-
is something I'm thinking through.
For sure, because the irises too typically can take quite a bit of water. But yeah,
But the Artemisia back there is not going to want that much water.
is that Artemisia back there? Which one are you talking about? The prostrate one or this thing back here?
Actually, the other one you didn't.
This one here.
Yeah.
See, I don't know if that was like maybe a ceanothus or something. Yeah, I'm not sure what this is. But you're right in that I think the point you're making though is like that Artemisia, whatever it may be, could have totally different watering needs than what's around it. Also, I would just like note this is a very tidy, I suppose, like there's this DG, clearly there's a border of the with the pavers and whatnot. So clearly that's it's very intentional, and like maintaining that look seems to be important. Obviously I can't ask the person, but any kind of fallen debris that falls outside of this, I would think would need to be cleaned up because it seems to be a very important aspect. Some people kind of like the mulch free kind of like curly and wild aesthetic. So this to me is like, okay, this is much more, what's the word? I don't want to say manicured because it's not manicured, but it's closer to that end of the spectrum, if you know what I mean, since there's like this clean DG, clean borders, that sort of thing. I'll move to the next photo, unless anyone. Oh, Brandy, did you have your hand up?
Yeah. Can we go back to the photo?
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
No, that's okay. Okay. Oh, great points, Drew, about the irrigation and also the iris plants. I was wondering about those as well. I wonder if you could even have 2 different hydrozones there, but that probably wouldn't work with the irises, around the tree. So anyway, that's just a thought. But the other thing is I was looking at that plant. I guess you're trying to figure out what is that, an Artemisia, or I don't know if that's a sage, but you see how they maintained it. Like look how it looks, so I'm wondering if it was just, kind of too large. We talked about that last class, with the sage. If it's, you should minimize the tips, or I forgot what you said, but
well, like tip
yes.
pinching to kind of create more of
Yes.
the like dense branching. Yeah, because this potentially was pruned away here at the bottom and now it's kind of coming off the top, or maybe pruned to kind of create that fluffy top. Yeah, that's a good point. Like investigate further what's going on here.
It looks cool. It does
yeah.
look cool, but just wondering, why?
Yeah, because if it's something that requires a lot of maintenance, like if you need to be pruning this regularly because it's so big, that's like, extra work. Or maybe it was, it's not. Okay, good points. What about this guy? Anything of note here? There's no right or wrong answers. I'm not expecting anything. These are just truly kind of random pictures. I'm not expecting you guys to find the like Easter egg in it or anything. But here's, yeah, newly installed, and this is just 4 months later on the right, so a shorter interval of time than the other ones. And yeah, you can see obviously like you're looking from a different perspective, excuse me. Anything of note here? Or anything some of you guys might want to write down on your garden assessment? Oh yeah, I see a hand up. There's, did you want to?
Looks
Yeah.
like the low point.
Oh, the low point. Yes, yeah, exactly. It's like the low point in the landscape, right? So whatever's, especially in this photo, you can see whatever's going down should go this way. However,
Right.
there is this barrier here. So actually, it's like a lost opportunity to collect that water because it's going to, at least any surface is just going to go here and then move along down to the sidewalk. So yeah, that definitely, yeah.
You know, they could have made it a riparian garden.
Yeah, had they not put in that barrier, that maybe this could have been more water-loving corner, for sure.
Right, because on the lower part of the left-hand picture, you can see erosion. You can see
Yes,
something's happening there, and that doesn't look good.
yes, exactly. So yeah, for me too, there's
Problem.
obvious DG erosion stuff happening. So you know,
Yeah.
definitely it's moving through here. And also that's like potentially you have to be replenishing that DG, you know, so yeah, there's a lot of, definitely that's, those are good points for sure. Anything about maybe like plant spacing? Does it seem appropriate?
They look too close.
Yeah, I kind of feel they might be a little close, especially since it's only 4 months later and they're already getting to be, you know, pretty close together. This is the Lilacina, the Verbena Lilacina, and there's some kind of grass, I suppose, that's here, because I think this is the two, and then there's a Dudleya in front, it looks like. So that might just get totally covered by this Verbena Lilacina here, or even the grass. So yeah, I'm a little suspect here. It looks like an Abutilon palmeri. They just look a little dense, you know, or maybe it'll grow into being a little dense. Right now, the spacing seems fine, but all of these are gonna, you know, get bigger. So yeah, I would kind of wonder about the spacing also, especially since it's only 4 months later. All right, let's see. Let's see if there's, I think I have one more photo. What about this guy? A lot of comments I think could be made on this.
That's just scary. Obviously, it looks, well, in the picture, it looks like all their mulch is washing away. It's going down the slope. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, so either they need to replenish their mulch or potentially, you know, do some kind of water catchment swale or something like that to keep the water from just shedding all of the mulch off. Anything else?
Like that heading? What are
Yes,
those?
for sure.
Salvia?
Yeah, it looks like some kind of salvia in the back there, but definitely some deadheading in need, you know, for sure. That's, yeah, there's a lot of this dry stuff here that looks like it could be just deadheaded. Maybe, I think this might be a different plant back here. Yeah. Yeah, Jacob, go ahead.
It looks like, I mean, some of the plants are doing well and some are dying or struggling a lot. And then back to that replacement of mulch, I mean, it looks like the drainage off the house, there's probably no storm drain, spouts or anything, and it looks like it's washing down.
Right. Yeah, it's like, we don't know really the topography of this, but something's up. Like there's a wet spot here, but it looks dryish here. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I think you make a good point. Like there's some runoff thing maybe happening, and yeah, some look happy. Like this one doesn't seem unhappy. These look a little questionable. So yeah, maybe it's a watering thing, or maybe they're getting some extra water that the other plants are, yeah, like investigating that further.
Yeah, that could be natural rainfall. It could also be an irrigation system issue.
Mhm.
I see in the background, it looks like they have a lawn. So I don't know,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
they
this.
continued with the irrigation pop-up sprinklers, I'd imagine, in the front. I'm not sure.
Right.
I don't know.
Yep.
I kind of tend towards informal gardens, so I kind of dig like, little annuals popping up next to bigger plants. And um, it's interesting. Yeah, it seems like with the amount of water that is in this landscape right now, I think that's like an Arctostaphylos, like kind of towards the center right. I'd be interested
Yeah.
to see how that does with excess water and hotter weather.
Right. Yeah, it's hard because we don't have a lot of information. It's just photos, but definitely like this could be, I actually like, it looks kind of, some folks thought this looked a little gnarly, but I think like with a little bit of mulch and maybe like addressing whatever irrigation runoff issue, whatever the watering situation here and deadheading, this could, look kind of, yeah, more like a little more like informal wild garden and, and work for sure. Not that it doesn't work now.
Yeah, no, I think it'd do really well with some wildflowers.
Yeah, and it potentially maybe has had more, depending on the season. We don't really know if this is we don't know what time of year this photo was taken. But yeah, maybe it would just be filled with some wildflowers, and then these things, if they get bigger, I don't know. It's hard to say what everything is.
Are we sure that it's planted? Maybe it's all natural. Just a dirt.
Oh, I imagine it was only because there's like lawn and a driveway. It's hard to come across a drive. Yeah, but that'd be cool if it just was like shown up on its own. Okay, well, I think, do I have another photo? No. I'm just gonna go through this and then we can take a little break. Oh, wait, okay. So we talked about the checklist or the garden assessment, however you want to kind of refer to it, but kind of going from that checklist, like site assessment, what we all were just doing in the activity, and then kind of making a plan. So kind of coming to an agreement on what tasks are important. So a lot of you guys were just saying, everyone was like, yeah, well, there's some kind of watering issue happening here. So that's kind of like getting from the checklist to the plan. We're getting closer to like, what's the issue? So we're going to go through these steps in some slides real quick, but essentially starting with creating a map, adding all the info, identifying your main problems, which is usually one of these things, or falls into one of these categories. We'll talk a little bit about utility connections, and then setting the priority with the owner, documenting it back to them, and then updating that annually. So the creating the map part, personally, I like to just do that, like bring a picture, like a Google Earth shot of the place, or if you have an architect's plan, great. If you have, a map already of it, but having that at the same time as I do the site assessment, because I like to just mark all that stuff on my map, especially like we were saying, the kind of high points, low points, any topographical stuff, wet areas. I just like to make that on the map, but also anything else on your site assessment that we kind of went over, just collecting all the information, and a map is super helpful along with whatever photos you take. You definitely want to take photos. You always want to take photos. You think you'll remember, but you won't. / it's always good to have like before and after. So take as many pictures as you can, and then using your map to kind of identify the water, like the way water moves on the landscape. Also wherever what is it called? Like any water sources, even if it's seasonal, like the rain gutters or the actual water spigot, where's the irrigation box, things like that. Definitely where's the end of the property, where's the neighbor's fence, like mark that real well so that you have a good, accurate little map. And definitely like north and south, definitely orient yourself, because you're going to have, the north facing side of the house is going to have seasonal shade. There's going to be shade or actually shade all year long. There's always going to be some aspect of shade on the north facing side. So noting if it's south facing, north facing, all those things on your map. And then all of that, the map and the assessment together is kind of like your overview. And then you kind of analyze your findings and identify what's the main issues, and kind of listing your main concerns. And you should have kind of had that with your garden assessment. If you're noting which is the priority, which is the main issue, you should be prioritizing that as you go. Is it a pest issue? Is it too many weeds? Could this be a pruning issue? Is this is it overplanting? going through the checklist should something should pop out to you as being, what's the problem, or what, or the client will tell you, right? They'll be like, this is my main issue. But, so it should be pretty obvious. But yeah, making sure you kind of think through everything. Is it a pruning issue? Is it the appropriate plant selection for the site, or is it something you have to resolve from the irrigation? We kind of did that with the exercise, but that's where you're kind of like really consolidating and coming to a conclusion. Just a point on utility connections, definitely mark those on your map. Knowing where the irrigation system is, or like, the point of connection is really important. Hopefully when it was installed, it has a shutoff valve for your irrigation system, meaning like, if you break a pipe or something in the irrigation system, you don't have to turn off all the water to fix it. You just turn off the shutoff valve. And if you don't have a shutoff valve, I highly recommend you install one. Obviously you charge for that, but it just makes a world of difference if you do break anything. And pipes break eventually, you know what I mean? That happens. And then contacting Dig Alert. So I hope you guys know this service, but 811 or Dig Alert. This is great. This is like a free service you can call, or even online you can do, basically ask for them to mark, you put in a work order, you say like where you're planning on digging, you have to mark where you plan on digging so that they come out, and within 72 hours of you putting in the work order, they come out, the different utilities will come out and mark where their lines are. So if it's gas or electric or cable, whatever, they mark where they are on site. And this is really, really helpful. Especially for like if you're doing rain basins or infiltration basins, clearly, knowing where you should and shouldn't dig. But even if you're not digging very deep, if you're planting a big tree, preferably you don't want to do it like right over where the pipes are. So this is a super helpful free service that I really recommend everybody use if you didn't know about it. But that's just kind of like a reminder in there when doing your site assessment and whatnot. And sometimes owners actually have already done it and they know it. Maybe they had it done when they moved in or something like that, had some other construction. So asking about those things. Next would be setting the priorities. Obviously with your owner, you've probably figured out what the priority is that you want to focus on, but making sure that coincides with whatever their needs are and their concerns, and knowing what they want and agreeing to that, is really helpful and is going to save you both time and money, right? Because if making sure you understand what they want and what you see as being the need for the garden, and trying to kind of make those fit. Because what was I going to say about that? Yeah, it's just going to make a more accurate estimate, right? Because you're going to be like, oh, this is the service they want. They don't want any of these things. So here's what I can offer. And this is what you can, I don't know what else I have to add to that. Sorry, guys, I'm just having a brain fart. Anyway, set those priorities. Definitely do it in writing if you can. Also, just documenting this, like you would set the priorities, maybe like agree to what you think the maintenance issues are for the site, and what you think, once you've agreed to that, then you want to document all that back to them. So using that Google image map or whatever, maybe like make it nicer, formalize it, or some kind of landscape plan, or even just your checklist that's more formalized. That's when you're going to start to kind of like create a plan with the owner or the client, so you're kind of like, this is my assessment of the site. This is what you've said you need. And these are the priorities we've discussed. And, here's the plan. Here's the maintenance plan we've got going on. So, yeah, this would be, essentially kind of documenting it to them. And then if you do have a maintenance plan, you end up working with them or whatever, you want to make sure you're just reviewing that maintenance plan regularly with the clients, so that you just keep, update it annually. Things change, and using part of a monthly visit to talk to them is a good time to update that plan. Things you just kind of telling them, communicating with them about how you see their garden going. How's it going forward, and what you see needs to be done, or the next steps type of thing. And definitely try to take advantage of doing some kind of visit with them monthly, or some kind of annual update with them sometime before the rains, so that you can take advantage of, if there's any planting that needs to be done, take advantage of those rains, our rainy season. So lastly, before we take like a little break, this is just like landscape professionals kind of top issues that they say that they have with gardens. So the point being, these are probably going to be things that you'll be dealing with the most. So being aware of them, but it's overplanting, pruning because of overplanting, ants, gophers, weeds, and availability of plants in local nurseries. So these are all things to kind of keep in mind, because these are the things landscape professionals kind of say are their issues. I know that I have heard a lot and have experienced too is the watering issues and kind of managing expectations with clients about watering with natives. So clearly, if you're in charge and you're in charge of all the watering, you won't be making any mistakes. Just kidding. Everybody makes mistakes. But that's sometimes if you don't kind of explain well about how the watering is for establishing natives with owners or clients, then there can be some plant loss, because it's not, you know, it's not an obvious thing. A lot of people are like, oh, well, they're natives, they don't need water. Or maybe they just think like, it's a plant, it needs water, you know, whatever they might think. So that's kind of just the top issues that are reported by landscape professionals. We'll do a little, let's see, what's my next slide? Oh yeah, okay, let's do like a 5-minute break. We're basically at 6, so 6:05, we'll come back and we'll get into, what is my next topic? Oh, we're gonna do troubleshooting and then do like a cost analysis thing. So at 6:05, let's make it back.
Hey Claire, I just wanted to let you know that I am here.
Hi, Brenda.
I caught most of the class.
Thanks.
You know, I'm still working on some of the certificates. I don't have Evan to sign them, so not everyone will get them tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Oh, well.
Well.
We'll mail them out.
Okay.
Not a problem.
Is everyone signed up for the, or are they full? The
They're not full. We have about 12 people signed up.
okay, guys, sign up if you
Yeah.
can.
I got a question about the class tomorrow. Cause I wasn't able to go to the irrigation one, which I was really bummed out about, but I mean, I'm assuming it's outdoors and we're walking.
It's outdoors.
So I should just wear like my hiking boots and shorts and
We don't recommend that you wear shorts just because the some of the plants might cause you know, atopic dermatitis depending on how sensitive you are. Our dress code at work is long pants and closed-toed shoes. But you are welcome to wear whatever you are comfortable wearing. The reminder does say park on the street, and please park on the street on wheatland or ledge and walk up.
Right.
Parking is very limited, and please walk park on the street.
one last question. I may have some babysitting issues with my, she's 14.
Mhm.
If I have to, could I bring her with me or?
No kids. We don't like kids here. No kids, no dogs, no cute little babies or puppies. No. Yes, of course you can bring her. She might be bored, but that, you know, the 14-year-olds are always bored. Yeah, very welcome. She's welcome to walk the hiking trail while you're busy in the irrigation class. She's also welcome to walk along with you in the irrigation class as well. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
You're welcome. Mhm.
What if it
Everyone's
spawns
welcome.
her? What if it spawns her like pruning, love for pruning?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
True. I mean, my daughter is very, very smart, you know, so I wouldn't be surprised. Thank you.
No problem.
Stand up. Did you get your treats? Did you get your treats, my baby dog?
We can hear somebody talking to their puppy.
Oh, that was me.
Oh,
Jill, sorry.
no, it's okay.
It's been here
Sounds
all day.
cute.
She just came in.
You can say hi to her for all of us.
Here, you can see her, maybe.
Oh,
She's She's a monster.
She's a monster.
She hates everybody but us.
I have a pet like that. I'm like, she's lovely, but he's a jerk.
Yeah, you can't come to the door, that's for sure.
Yeah, I always say that he has no redeeming qualities except for we love him.
Well, she has some redeeming quality.
That's good. That's better than me.
She also ate meth in the park the day after Christmas, so now we're like much more lenient with.
Wow.
Meth.
She survived. Yes.
I'm sorry, that made me laugh. I know
It makes
it's wrong,
everybody laugh.
but-
Isn't that terrible?
Yeah,
In rehab.
So high and it was so scary. And
Oh, I bet.
I could
They kept-
imagine.
asking if they could do CPR if anything happened. Her heart rate was over like 200 beats a minute.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
Eyes
It's like a
were
hummingbird or
bugged out.
something.
It was terrible. They asked, the first thing the vet asked was, do you have any Adderall in the house? I was like, no. But she was out on a walk and she could have just sniffed it, you know?
Wow.
Yeah, we don't know. But she was at the vet it was quite expensive and she was there for 24 hours and pretty wrecked when she got back.
Wow.
Yeah. So now she's a little more needy, like she'll let you pet her and stuff.
Oh, so it had like a benefit. She was like,
Mhm.
yeah, okay.
It did.
That'll happen, you know?
Yeah.
Accidental meth overdosing.
And no
I can see
joke.
that. Yeah, I can see that happening.
It was meth and some other amphetamine, but they didn't know what the second one was.
That's so crazy. Poor
So
thing.
somebody was really high and dropped their stuff in the park.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, this was your parking lot?
No, it was in the Garfield Park in South Pasadena.
Just kidding.
Yeah. So if you ever have a pet there, be careful.
Be careful, guys.
So Claire, I have a question about the homework, just homework in general. How much do we need to do to get our certificate?
Brenda, do you want to answer that?
What was that?
I was going to ask Brenda if she wanted to answer that.
I don't have an answer
Oh,
for
okay.
you. We were not given any kind of a
Like-
cutoff for like when to dump people. So, you know, even if you do the homework wrong, you did the homework.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
You know,
I would
and
say,
we're,
yeah,
I think class participation and attendance is what we're, you know, really looking at. And even some of the people that didn't, you know, make the class into Zoom, they were able to watch later and send an email saying, hey, yeah, I watched it and you know,
Okay.
thank you. So
Oh.
it's, yeah.
it's somewhat
I
of an
don't know,
honor system, guys. You know,
very much
Oh, okay.
an honor.
Well, I
system.
got like 7 out of 8, so
that's pretty
I was-
good.
that's pretty
Yeah.
good. Okay, all right. I'm not going to worry about the 8th one, but
No.
I will tell
think there's
you. I
only
will
7.
tell you. 7th was the IPC or Integrated Pest Management, but
Yeah.
we have a new book at work, like called Tiny Hunters or something. Anyway, they say gophers hate juicy fruit gum.
Oh,
Oh,
I don't know about that.
wow.
I don't know.
Like, does it have to be chewed up and like in the
Yeah.
hole?
Yeah, I didn't. Everybody was talking about it. I didn't actually do the research, so I
Got
haven't
it.
written
I
anything
think
about that.
I heard somewhere that gophers hate methamphetamine too. So
Well, that's why there's no gophers in that park.
yeah,
Right. That's actually how they keep them away.
I'm like, there might be gophers there, but they don't have any teeth.
Yeah, exactly.
So
They can't see, but their eyes are so bugged out.
yeah,
They just kind of try to gum at the roots. They can't chew them out. So it's
Right,
perfect.
right.
yeah.
Guys, we figured it out. Meth for
Yeah.
gophers solves the problem. We should just add it to the curriculum, you know?
Right?
Does that fall under like a class for fermentation or something? Chemistry, maybe?
That's true, yeah.
Spare some change.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
There was a
Yeah,
song.
We
And-
did search up the ground squirrels because that's our biggest problem at the nursery, and it's mostly poisoning the squirrels. And we
Have
don't
you-
want to.
There is a deterrent. I mean, it's like most deterrents, it doesn't work like 100% like a, you know, like a
Right.
bait, but there's that critter ritter. It's like a mix of a bunch of different aromatic, it's like kind of, I I think it's in a pellet, and I also think you can put it into like a liquid form. But it's it's used for organic farms and stuff because it's not toxic. But I mean, I've seen it. I mean, it does. It's a deterrent. It doesn't like kill them, get rid of them, but it can work. You know.
Is it like California Bay Laurel? It just burns their eyes and their
no, it
nasal
has
passages.
It does smell really strong. It has a bunch of mix of like a bunch of different aromatic stuff, and it kind of smells like really good if you're like at least 20 feet away or something. You know, you're like, that's kind of nice, but it's very strong smelling. I think, yeah, for mostly for like squirrels, you know, cats and raccoon type things. I know when I worked on a farm, they used it for, they would pour it in the squirrel tunnels, like their little holes and stuff at the edge of the farm. I don't know how effective it was, honestly, because we still had squirrels, but again, it's kind of like preventative. We have them, but they weren't like a total problem. They weren't like ruining crop stuff, but it's an option. Definitely something to consider.
We're surrounded by horses, and the guy from Tom Sawyer says it's the horse feed.
Yeah, absolutely.
That the squirrels just, it's not even like the horse feed in storage. It's the horse feed that the horses are actually eating. Like the squirrels will jump in. And,
they're like, yeah.
Yeah, they'll steal it from the horses.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I've heard Critterator I've definitely used, but yeah, it's kind of like live trapping, which is also just gives you a new issue, which is like,
we live trap here. Yeah. All we do is just move them somewhere else, but nothing gets killed.
Yeah.
But the traps can create havoc too. You know, once they're in those traps, there's like sometimes you can get 2 or 3 squirrels in a trap, and they're like gnawing on each other.
Yeah, it can be kind of gnarly, but
it can. We check them daily.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys. Not about meth and squirrels. We're going to talk about what are we talking about? Oh, we're going to keep going with the calendar. Well, this was an exercise, but we kind of already went through this. I just moved them around. Just lastly, so you guys already have this calendar, but I think just remembering, so going from that like kind of checklist / garden assessment, and then kind of thinking about your monthly activities that you have to do and scheduling them that way. So trying to figure out, you know, what part of this monthly plan calendar, I mean, you don't have to use this calendar, but what activities are going to be part of your maintenance bid, you know, what your services are, what services you're offering. So you can use this, but kind of this will help you kind of narrow in like, what am I doing every month and what am I offering every month, and customize it to the garden that you are working with. But you guys have this, you should be kind of familiar with that since we, we had a homework with it. Oops, I'm going crazy. 1, 2, there we go. Okay, so this is just a very, very general kind of troubleshooting guide. So essentially, you know, you can have a maintenance plan, but you're going to run into problems. That's just inevitable. It's life. And especially if it's new, you know, if native plants are new, there's going to be a time where you don't know what to do. And even if they're not new, there's like mysteries all the damn time. So when you run into a problem, you want to make sure that you at least have like some of your resources established. You know, if that's online resources like Hellscape or Theodore Payne's database, whatever it is, having your resources in your mind, like where do I go when I have a problem? Or maybe you have a horticultural expert friend, you know, or maybe somebody who just knows more than you. And once, you know, have those in mind, but then also whenever that happens, this is just kind of a basic troubleshooting steps that goes for anything in life, really. I mean, this is so general, but the idea is being systematic about when you're doing troubleshooting. So first, understand the problem, then making a plan, executing the plan, and then seeing if the problem gets solved in the time frame that you planned for. And with understanding the problem, if you're having an issue you don't normally have, obviously, you know, like you've never had this before, just kind of starting to think about like, is this different from other gardens that I have maintained or cared for, like looking to answer questions like, is this unique to native plants in the landscape? Or, you know, or is it like requiring a different approach because it's native plants? Thinking that through when you're having an issue. Something like for example, like summer deciduous plants, you know, plants that lose their leaves in the summer, or drought deciduous plants, like maybe an Encelia californica, like that might just be a native plant adaptation that's happening and not necessarily a problem in your garden. You know what I mean? So kind of, is this a native plant thing, or is this something I've seen in other gardens and maybe that would work for this situation? You know, is this a pest I've seen on, you know, non-native or something like that? And maybe just doing more research on the plant. You know, if you don't know it very well, maybe kind of start digging into the UCIPM website or something, because they even do it by plants a lot of times, and it'll tell you the kind of common pests and problems they have, or using your maintenance, what is it called? The data sheet that we looked through on the last class, that thing, you know, look at that, look up the plant and be like, okay, what are the issues that are commonly found on this? Or maybe you need to talk to someone. So obviously kind of like understand the problem, then kind of make a plan, you know, and usually that's kind of combined with researching, making some kind of list of whatever potential issues, or sorry, making a list of the issues and then like maybe potential solutions, and eliminating solutions you've already tried or already know don't work, or for this instance. And looking for any patterns too, you know, if there's a pattern that might be like temporal or what's it called, like spatial, you know, maybe this is a seasonal issue that comes up, or we don't see it in winter, or we don't see it in summer, or vice versa. Or is it like a spatial thing, like this plant is being affected, but it's really crowded in here, and this plant that's got a lot of air circulation around it and space and light isn't having the problem. So just trying to like hone in on what's going on. I would definitely always consider water issues, especially with native plants. So many things kind of go back to that. So always kind of put that at the top of your list as like potential, because yeah, so many issues kind of can compound after having poor, either like a bad irrigation system or inappropriate irrigation system for the plant palette, or poor drainage or something like that. So definitely kind of put that as a priority. And then make some kind of plan, you know, based off of all your research and the solutions you've come up with. Be like, okay, I'm going to try this plan because this seems like the best idea or the best option, and just using whatever your skills and judgment and your research tells you, and then execute that plan. And obviously executing the plan is essentially just, you know, means a site visit to do it, you know, and, you know, make that happen. If that's like applying a, you know, some kind of like neem or something like that, or picking like the, you know, pruning it or whatever your solution is, I would say execute it, but make sure you work your plan and be systematic about it, so that, well, going back to the address your irrigation first. Like say you have some issue, like you're having plant failure and maybe root rot's happening in plant failure, you would want to address the irrigation issue first if you're having that, because you don't want to go replanting the plants first, and or dealing with trying to like, you know, apply some kind of, you know, do some kind of pest management if you just have like a waterlogged situation because of a bad irrigation system, or, you know, overwatering. So always go for the irrigation first, execute your plan, and then moving to just seeing if the problem was solved, right? And it's a time frame thing. You should kind of put a time frame on it. These things aren't going to happen overnight, especially when using IPM. This is like kind of a more like non-toxic kind of holistic approach. So you shouldn't expect to see results right away a lot of the time. Sometimes I suppose that could be the case. But in general, you just, it's important to kind of do these systematic kind of execution of plans in orderly way, so you can learn what actually works, especially if this is new for you. You know, if you do execute a bunch of plans at once, like I'm going to apply neem, prune, get rid of this, move that, replant. If you're doing all of it at once, it's hard to know what worked, you know, if it works, and it's hard to know what didn't work if it doesn't work, you know. So doing it one by one is kind of doing the trial and error thing. But especially with the new problem, I highly recommend doing it that way, which is like kind of doing the step-by-step approach, and just do the process of elimination if it doesn't work. You know, if it doesn't work, move to the next solution that you listed and try that one. And that way you can kind of eliminate what potential solutions don't work or do work for the situation. So let's see. Next is, we're gonna, I think, oh yeah, I'm sharing. Okay, so the cost analysis of a work plan. So the financial aspects of native plant landscaping, there's a lot of different things, and I can't really give you like, this is how much you should charge, but we want to kind of talk about the cost for maintaining a turf versus a versus a native plant landscape. And that's very much because the curriculum was originally written for landscape professionals to transition them from conventional kind of turf replacement, turf gardens to like native landscape ones. So we do want to kind of talk about that. You want to kind of do, so you're using your garden assessment here. I have to stop sharing. Here's my, okay, so can you guys see this kind of Excel sheet? You should be able to. I'll assume no news is good news, and you can see it. So using that garden assessment and the plan, you have to kind of get down to like, okay, how many hours is this going to take? Because that's going to dictate how you're going to charge. And we have here, we have a couple different tabs down here you can see, and there's the turf garden and the native garden. And just to have a side by side so you can kind of think about how these look, the two different gardens. So I'm going to kind of walk us through the two of them. This is just kind of a, you know, an example landscape maintenance bid. And here you can see, oops. So here's the project. So it's like the side, front yards and backyard, the square footage. And then you have the hours per month of each thing. And you can see this little note here. It says visiting every week. So 4 times a month you're visiting. And so here, like this top one, for example, that's just this turf of 1,000 square feet on the front yard. We're saying if it's 4 hours a month, that means 1 hour per visit to just maintain the turf, right? Because it's weekly visits and it's a month, right? So here it just subtotals each of the areas. You have the turf, the bedding. Again, we're talking about a turf garden right now. This is not the native one. And then the back garden similarly is divided up into different square footages, and the subtotal here is 1,300, and you have a total square footage of 2,500. And then total hours are associated, and these hours are, you're determining these, you know, you're deciding based off of your crew and your experience. And here we have a total of 16 hours a month, and we're saying there's 4 visits a month if it's every week. So you're saying 4 hours per visit, right? And then here you have cost per month. So it's literally just the hours times the cost of the labor. And here, this chart, it's much longer. This is just kind of actual materials, but here we have labor costs, and we're just saying this maintenance worker is $40 an hour. This could be overhead. I mean, everybody, you know, has their rate, right? This isn't, it's not about specific numbers as much as it's about how to think about assigning like prices and things for your bids. So if this one's $40 an hour, this person, and we're saying 16 hours a month to maintain it, then that's just literally this is the formula, right? Oh, sorry. Oh, these are the formulas. That's the sum. That is 2. I'll just do the top one. So here you can see here we go. So it's just the 4 hours per month times the cell down there, which is the $40 per hour. So that comes out to 160. So the total cost per month is this total number of hours times $40 an hour, because that's what we're saying our labor worker costs. So that's $640 cost per month. So that's just straight what you have to pay to have someone maintain this. And you can even divide that up into costs per visit, which is simply this total cost per month divided by 4, because that's 4 weeks in a month, right? So each visit is going to be $160 because that's how many hours, that's how much per visit it is each week. And then you can just simply do the annual cost, which is your monthly cost times 12, so 7,680. You can then divide it up by annual cost, annual cost by per square foot. So that's literally just this cost here, your total annual divided by the square footage. And this comes out to almost $3 a square foot. So that's helpful for you knowing like, hey, in general, just to do like pay this labor at $40 an hour to do this much work on this site, it's going to cost me $3 a square foot. So you can just apply that, kind of do like back of the napkin calculations for different sites, you know, so that you just kind of can do quick math without having to do this whole thing. Okay, so just remembering these things here so I don't toggle back so much. Here's our square footage of 2,500. We had 16 hours per month, 640, there's a total cost, 7,680 is the annual, and then the cost per visit is 160. So moving to the native garden, we're saying this person, this client is transitioning, say, from this turf garden. The square footage is about the same, but it is a little less because there was a bedding thing that has not been included into the native plants. You can include it. This is, again, just an example. But, you know, basically you're transitioning about the same square footage, but this is like 200 square feet less. And then here you can see, I gotta float it on there, visiting twice a month. So in this scenario, we're saying that you're visiting 2 times a month for this native plant garden. Maybe this is a new native plant garden and needs 2 times a month visitings. Maybe you're visiting less, but in general, you're going to be doing fewer visits, or sorry, well, yeah, less frequent visits than you would for a turf garden. So to account for that, we first put this note that says, you know, visiting twice a month, which here then the way that kind of works out with the hours is, okay, the same 1,200 square feet is, we're saying it's 8 hours per month to do this, to maintain the native plant garden. And that is divided by 2, right? Because it's only 2 weeks per month. So this is only 2 visits you're gonna make. So that means you're spending 4 hours on the front yard instead of the 1 that we were spending on the grass, you know, in the turf yard. And so in total, like adding all these up, again, these are examples, same amount of hours per month, 16, but it's divided into only 2 visits as opposed to 4. So that means you have like a full day work, you know, an 8-hour day visit and an 8-hour day visit. And so the cost per month is going to be the same because it's the hours simply, which are the same as the other one, times the $40 per hour worker. We're saying, you know, if you're, obviously this depends on the, you know, we're imagining you have the same labor. But the cost per visit is going to go up, right? Because obviously the hours have gone up. So the other one was 160. And that's because it's, you know, you're only spending 4 hours there, and here it's 320 because you're spending 8 hours each visit, but fewer. And same annual cost, the square footage has gone up a little bit because the square footage, the annual cost per square foot has gone up a little bit because the square footage has gone down. But generally speaking, it's about $3 per square foot, you know, 3.5 or whatever. So this is just kind of a way to just kind of compare the two and just see like, okay, this is how I should be thinking about like just the base cost, you know, of the labor involved. So knowing this hours per month thing, and like I was saying with the garden assessment, you can use all that information to like kind of customize it per garden. Like, is this a pruning heavy garden and not a lot of weeding? Or is this like a brand new garden? We're gonna be doing a lot of weeding, watering, tip pinching, and customize your hours that way. So moving into that, the next tab is kind of on this, on calculating the hours per month or the time it takes to do each activity or task, so that you can start to kind of get an accurate number. Obviously, like if you're really experienced and you know how long it takes you to, you know, at a certain point, it's just like, yeah, it's this much square feet. I know this usually costs me about this much, but this is kind of starting from 0, right? So you determine these hours per month, and that's really based off of your experience, right? And, you know, the assessment that you made, you know, so, you know, the assessment says like, this is this type of garden, how much maintenance, it's a pretty high maintenance garden. And you know, it cost me this much to do the labor of it. So that's what it comes to. So here, this tab is the timing for tasks. And here it's divided by tasks per year, because we kind of talked about how each year is, well, the first couple of years are establishing phase, so there's different activities. You don't have to do this. You could make your own that would just be all the activities listed and the time in hours it takes to do each activity. So this is the time in hours, the 0.25, which is like 15 minutes, so that you can kind of sum these up and get like how much, because this is per visit, how many hours do I need to spend there? So this is kind of a way to get more into the details if you to figure out how much it would cost to do the maintenance, right? So you could create one of these tables like to create estimates for yourself, or put times that are accurate for you or your crew, or just time yourself if you don't know. But essentially there's some examples here, like deadheading a Salvia clevelandii by hand. We have it as a half hour. So you know, if you have like 3 Salvia clevelandii or Cleveland sages in a garden, that's at least an hour and a half you have to prune them, you know, every year. So that's going to be kind of like in there in your annual costs or in your monthly visit cost. And then you can do each activity, just kind of break it down into times. Here is weeding per 100 square feet as, you know, 15 minutes for 100 square feet. So if you had 200 square feet, it'd be a half hour. You just kind of break all these down, and you can customize this for your garden. So like I have a garden with 3 Salvia clevelandii and then 300 square feet, you know, just kind of adding this up. So, and you can, these can be, well, you don't have to get that into the, anyway, adding for all the things, all the activities that you do when you're doing maintenance. So it could be sweeping and cleaning up, half hour, that's pretty standard. Irrigation check, maybe you do that 4 times a year, add those hours in. Maybe if you're watering before you leave, add that in. Mulch application for 100 square feet, that says, we're saying that's 15 minutes every 100 square feet. So if you're doing a mulch application, you know, reapplying mulch annually, which you shouldn't have to, but if you had some situation where you were, you could, you know, have the hours for that. And then even down to things like tip pinching new plants per 100 square feet. We're saying 0.1 hours, so like 6 minutes per 100 square feet, just tip pinching. So maybe if you have a really large site, you know, that would make sense to have, you know, if you had like, I don't know, 1,000 square feet or something. Anyway, so you kind of get the point here. It breaks everything down into little time intervals so that you can actually input how many hours, and you can, here's the sum here of all of these activities that we're, you know, say we have. And so, you know, okay, per visit, I need 2.5 hours to, you know, do this site, and obviously customize it accordingly. Oh yeah, this one's kind of a good one. Prune by hand, medium-sized shrub per 10 plants. So again, like maybe a more mature garden, like just doing the pruning by how many plants. So if you have 30 plants in your garden and it takes, let's see, an hour and a half, you know, it's going to be 3 times, you know, that. So that's like 4.5 hours to prune by hand 30 medium-sized shrubs. Of course, these times again are dependent on you and your crew and how fast you work, but I think this is a good general starting point. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to. Yeah, and I think this too is really helpful. These activities are helpful to have for if you're ever invoicing, you know, like what, having the maintenance here, actually this will be a good example. I think this is just a landscape sample pricing kind of sample contract of like a turf proposal. And so this is turf, but you know, it breaks it down into all the different activities. So that those activities you had there, you can kind of make that as like your invoice. You know, you just copy that over and it's like, okay, we pruned these, we did that. Or you can include it in your bid, you know, in your base contract. It's like, what's included, you know, the pruning of all medium-sized shrubs or whatever it is, you know, this, and here you can see with the turf, obviously there's like fertilization because that's something you have to do with turf. And some things that are more for kind of conventional gardens. But the idea is like trying to make something similar for your native plant contracts or agreements with people, having, you know, what's included, how often you do it, so that you can really also educate people on what maintenance is for native gardens, because also there is this misconception that they don't need maintenance, you know, so spelling it out for people is so they know what to expect and that you're being upfront, I think is really critical, you know, for them. So I think just lastly, the rest of this is just, oh, right, just like unit costs for things. If you, like you could, here it's stuff that you might typically plant in a conventional garden, you know, like 4-inch potted annual color. You could have, you know, 1 gallons, planting them out, what the unit cost is, maybe labor and materials and whatever markup you have. Here it has irrigation materials as cost plus the 15% markup, and then you have your labor costs. So that, like, again, everything's just kind of upfront so you can show them whenever each visit, like this is what what we're doing. I mean, some people have totally different agreements where they don't, you know, they don't need to provide all this information for their client, but just, it's a good way to think about it. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the, let's see. Oh, I guess I stopped sharing accidentally. Oh, can you guys see my screen? Looks like it's gone.
No,
Okay, I'm gonna share it again. I think I accidentally, there. Is that back? Well, wait a little bit. There's sometimes the delay.
yeah, it's back.
Okay, great. So I got a bunch of, so just some of the last slides. Let's see, inventory. Inventory is always kind of important. You definitely want to do that if you can. Having them correctly identified is important, not just for clients, but also for you. I mean, it's nice for education and even just like some people like to have that look that looks more like a kind of botanical garden or something. And, you know, for everybody's learning. But also just so you know, because there are so many different species, there's like over 6,000 plus different cultivars of native plants. So knowing what works, like what are the winners and losers for each space is really, really helpful. So if you have something that works and you know the cultivar and the species and you had good inventory or record keeping on it, that's just gonna really help because you're just like, I know this always works in this garden, I'll just plant this in. Or even something like, you know, the yarrows, for example, the Achillea millefolium. There's like all the different colors. There's like paprika and California white and island pink rose. And if you have all one of color, you really want to know what you have there so that you can replace it appropriately if that's something that matters. So inventory is important. This is just a little database. I think this is actually from like Microsoft Access or something. Again, this was from the last lecture, which we had more time to spend on inventory and things like that. But this is a little in depth, but I think this one is kind of helpful. Having something that has, I mean, if you have the time and can do this, this is an awesome service, I think, but not everybody can. But having like, you know, the name of the plant, maybe a photo of it in the garden, a photo of it from the nursery. So like, you know what it's supposed to look like, having the cost, the date you got it, where did you get it from, how many, stuff like that, you know, where you planted it. Sometimes I like to have like a label or like a mapping system of the garden. If it's like a hydrozone, you know, like this is hydrozone 3, that's where it's planted, something like that. And then whatever notes, you know, here it says it's under the foot of the window. That's how they designated where it is. And then it says 2018, very scraggly looking. It sends up shoots, but it's so messy and grim looking, has never flowered. So looking back and you see that it was acquired in 2013 and it's been 5 years and it's looks like this and it's never flowered. Like that is helpful for you to be like, you know what, we need to replace this, or this is something else needs to go here, or kind of review what's going on with it. So having a database is helpful in that sense, you know, being able to have like a record of what does and doesn't work, and also just kind of an ongoing record. Signs of success. This is just like what are your metrics? You know, what metrics determine success? I think with the landscape installation, a lot of times it's kind of easier because it's like, okay, you could just say like the plant's doubled in size in 6 months, like that's kind of obvious or whatever. But sometimes, you know, you just want to make sure that you know what they want and that they understood what would be kind of considered a successful garden, so that they can like your client can understand that this is like, you know, it's basically like it's working, you know, like help them understand that the garden is successful and working and alive and that sort of thing. I mean, this would be with someone who really has no experience, I think, with gardens. Otherwise, it's pretty obvious. But you can have other factors, like aside from, you know, it doubles in size every 6 months. It could be just like the diversity of animals and insect life, you know, maybe seasonal color all year long, or stuff like that. You know, those can be signs that you can indicate to clients like, hey, this is looking good. I'm seeing a lot more insect life. I'm seeing lizards. You know, like all of those things can also be things you use to educate or help your clients see their garden as being, you know, like successful and working. Communicating expectations to owners. I kind of touched on this a little bit, but you definitely want to be very clear. And I would say as many opportunities as you can to manage expectations you should take. You know, that was a weird sentence. Basically, as much as you can, repeat yourself about expectations and what's realistic. Because if you're not clear about it, or maybe you just said it once and you're like, yeah, I said it once, it can be like kind of a jolt for them to be like, oh, this isn't what I thought it would be. You know, I thought it was going to look more like this, or I thought the maintenance would include this. So using as many opportunities as you can to remind them of what you have in mind and what they should be expecting to see in their garden. So some things to consider communicating that would be like time for plants to reach maturity, especially like some of those photos we saw earlier. You know, it looked really sparse in the beginning. So being clear with a client that if you were planting a garden like that, being like, hey, it looks very brown and mulchy to start with because it takes them usually about 3 years to get to their full size, but they will fill in this space. It will be full, whatever, you know, and using multiple times, you know, like mentioning that multiple times, not just, you know, at the day you plant it out. You know, you want to make sure that they understand how long it's going to take for it to look like more of a mature, filled out garden. Because these aren't kind of the more conventional gardens where you just like roll out the turf. It looks basically the same it does the day you install it as it does, you know, 6 months from now, almost, you know. So definitely want to be clear about that. Also, something you might want to mention or communicate is watering needs until establishment. I highly, highly recommend this. I think, especially if they're going to be involved with the watering, and even if they're not, like, you want them to understand that, because either they're going to think they can just go out there and water it whenever they want to, or they think like, oh, they're native plants, why should I water it? So very, very much trying to communicate to them this idea that you need to water so that they, in the first couple of years, so that they get those extensive root systems and they actually become established and can take less water as they become mature. But early on, they really need nice deep waterings, and yeah, communicating that. I actually would really recommend something in writing that you can leave with them, because, you know, sometimes the excitement of having a new garden is like, yay, and then it's like, wait, how do we water this? Or confusion about what's appropriate when, you know, reminding them about the seasonal changes that you'll be making to your irrigation for native plants. You know, you're not watering the same all year long. And then lastly, low maintenance does not mean no maintenance. A lot of people are under the misconception that native plants, or that California in general, is like one big desert. So they don't need water, or they don't need maintenance because they're wild and they live out in the mountains. That's something you want to make sure that they understand. There is maintenance to them if they want their garden to look a certain way. You know, out in nature, things kind of could grow on top of each other and be really thick and, you know, dense, and maybe not what you want in your front yard, or maybe what you want. But either way, making sure they understand that it's not a no maintenance garden, because some people do think that, like, oh great, it's native plants, oh great, I'm just gonna install it and then I'm done, I have no problems. It's just low maintenance, not no maintenance. So definitely explaining that to clients so that they're not confused about that down the line. And just lastly, opportunities for growth. Theodore Payne, obviously, or any kind of local California Native Plant Society chapter, they usually have tours when it's not, you know, a global pandemic, and lots of seminars, and obviously online meetings and things like that that you can attend. And I really recommend them just to kind of be active and learn. And you can take advantage of them yourselves, or even invite your clients, you know, especially newbies to natives. They might be really excited and want to learn more. So yeah, definitely take advantage of those if you can. And so many, especially CNPS chapters, love hearing from like people that do maintenance about, you know, telling stories of, you know, gardens they've maintained, and kind of documenting their, not just success, but even the failures. You know, they really want to know. And I've seen a lot of CNPS meetings where, yeah, it's just, people are excited to hear about, you know, your experience with maintaining plants. So even participating is a good idea. Even, you know, the Theodore Payne Foundation has the the annual garden tour. And many of those gardens are the same ones from last year because people are interested still in how they're maintained even over time, not just like, oh, we saw it once. So yeah, Native Plant Community is always interested in maintaining gardens and how people are doing it. So just becoming part of that community is, I think, important and helpful, and just goes away to like educating yourself further and, you know, meeting more people in the community. Okay, so promoting your certification, where am I at? Okay, we got some time. These are the same slides that we had at the very first class, but just as a reminder, so once you have your certification, you can identify yourself on in any kind of publications you have, or social media profiles, or business cards, whatever, you know, kind of stuff you have. You can identify yourself as a certified California native plant landscaper, and, you know, your name badge, all that stuff. You can promote that you are certified. You can have the certification logo in, you know, any of your like customer proposals, whatever it is, any of your kind of communications that you have. And it says here you can keep the certificate in your work vehicle, or, you know, show it at potential meetings. But in general, the only way to verify to people that you actually have a certificate is to either show them it, or have them, or you contact Theodore Payne Foundation and they will tell you who is certified. So you can have it with you to prove that you have it, or just use the logos. I believe you guys, I can't remember, I think you guys get these decals. It is here, but I couldn't remember if they got them last time. Anyway, you get these like logoed decals that you can also stick on, you know, work vehicle or whatever else thing that you want to throw stickers on and identify yourself as having done the certification program. And then of course, lastly, you just, you know, being proud of yourself for actually doing taking the time through all these classes to actually, you know, learn something about native plants and their maintenance, and just kind of shows like your dedication to that, right? If you're an employer, right now, currently the program doesn't certify employers or like entities or businesses. It just can certify individuals. So if you have folks that work for you that are certified, you can you know, advertise that or whatever on your own kind of communications stuff, you know, social media profiles that you have certified native plant landscapers, but they can't currently certify like entities. And then Theodore Payne. Sorry?
Oh, sorry. I just had a question. So say, for example, like as president of my company, would it be possible that me as a president teach my fellow employees to further inform my company of the certification and the process, and maybe even bring them along into this certification in the future?
You mean like, I mean, you could encourage them to get certified also, and you could absolutely like say that, you know, the owner of this business is a certified California native plant landscaper that's dedicated to, you know, educating their staff, but you can't, you know, if they're not certified, they're not certified is all it is. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I think actually, I mean, I know this was on the table, but there's no confirmation to it, is that they do want to work towards certifying entities. That is something that they are planning on doing. So hopefully in the future, that will be an option that you could actually, you know, do. But currently it is a pilot program, you know, we're still in the very beginning phases. So anyway, so Theodore Payne, like I was saying, oh no, I didn't say this. So they want, you know, they want you to succeed. They are dedicated to helping you, but they can't actually directly promote you on their website. Like they don't have a list of the certified people's names on their website. It's like a liability issue basically. So, but they will provide you with all the materials you need to like basically identify yourself. So the decals, the certificate, and like I said, people can contact Theodore Payne to confirm, you know, if you have a client that really doesn't trust you, I guess. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, yeah, they can confirm through Theodore Payne Foundation if someone is certified. Oh, and that's the last slide, guys. I thought I had another one. Anyway, okay, so that's it.